Hello, thanks for joining this Embarcadero DBA and Developer Skill Sprint. In this skill sprint, we'll be covering DBArtisan's Performance Analyst, our cross-platform real-time performance tool. As such, in this skill sprint, we'll be working with DBArtisan only. So let's go ahead and get started. So here we're looking at DBArtisan, and what we're going to do today is work in both SQL Server as well as Oracle. Performance Analyst is also supported with DB2 as well as Sybase, but in today's session we'll be working strictly with Oracle and SQL Server, and I'll be able to show you some of the information that we're able to see within Performance Analyst. So Performance Analyst is a licensed add-on. It's part of the Workbench series of DBArtisan. It is also potentially part of the Analyst pack when you purchase DB Power Studio or DBArtisan XE. So here you're going to see my Explorer, and from the Explorer we can select a data source, and we'll notice if you are licensed for any of the analysts, you'll see those analysts activated in the Analyst menu. So again, I've already started up Performance Analyst for both of my platforms. So what I want to visit though and discuss...
Scott, it might not be showing your screen.
I am showing it right now. Sorry about that. So here we are. Again, just really quick, we're looking at DBArtisan. Looking at if you're licensed, you'll see that in the Analyst menu and the drop-down. We'll view that if you are licensed, those will be activated. The Performance Analyst is a per data source, or per server, I should say, a utility. And so what we're going to do is when you first start it up and first start up the Analyst series, we're going to install either the stored procedure for SQL Server, and we're going to install a package for Oracle, stored procedures for DB2, as well as stored procedures for Sybase. So very small footprint, but we use those stored procedures or packages to make calls in, run our queries, and then return the results back to our screen. So once the first person installs the Analyst pack and the stored procedures or packages, those can be accessible to all the other users of DBArtisan in your environment. So again, those packages or stored procedures will only get installed once per data source. So let's go ahead and take a look at Performance Analyst. This is Performance Analyst for SQL Server. And really quick, I'm going to hop over and show Performance Analyst for Oracle. Now the reason why I just toggled quick is I wanted to show the similar UIs. Again, cross-platform, it's in our DNA. We want to make things visibly equal across the platform, so you don't have to learn something net new, and so we take the extra care to make sure we're displaying information for you that makes sense across both platforms. So we'll toggle back over to our SQL Server instance. So on our home page, we can see some ratio analysis. So in the upper left-hand corner, we'll start seeing the buffer cache hit ratio, all the way down to log cache hit ratio, and some of the activity, the CPU busy, the IO busy, and the server idle. If I right-click, access the context menu here, we can see that I have some options. So I can change the graph type if I'd like. I have a line graph. If I'd like to go to a bar graph, I can select the bar graph now and see the values represented that way. As such here, I could go to a pie graph if I wanted to, a pie chart. Down at the bottom, we're going to start seeing some of the top system bottlenecks. So here's our page IO latch, page latches, and some of the other object bottlenecks that we may have occurring. And here we have our storage bottlenecks. Database is low on space, as well as logs low on space. So I'm seeing some of the values here. Number of errors current in the error log. You'll notice, and I hopefully you can see this in our session here, but it's in red. And Performance Analyst does allow us to set thresholds. So in this case, anytime I get more than one error in the error log, I want it to display in red, so it will alert me. Over on the right-hand side, we're looking at the SQL analysis, top reads, writes, CPU, and elapsed time. And we can see those values here. And here's our storage analysis, and then here's our workload analysis. Now, if I switch gears and hopped over to the Oracle side, right, we're going to see some very similar information, right? We're going to look at some of the hit ratios. Right, we're going to look over at the other activity. Again, this is specific to Oracle, but we're presenting it in a manner that is similar to look, so you don't have to relearn something. So we're going to give you all the activity and the metrics there. Down the bottom, we're going to see the top system bottlenecks displayed across time. Here, my problem table spaces, you'll notice that's in red, highlighting, letting me know that I do have an issue that violated the threshold. Again, we're looking at the SQL analysis, the storage, as well as the workload analysis. So this is our home page working with the performance analyst. So I'm going to take a step back to SQL Server, and I want to just really quick look at the options for SQL Server. There's a couple that I want to point out. So first, there's our global options, and these are applicable both to Oracle and or SQL Server. So we're going to look at global, the refresh interval. How often do we want performance analysts to refresh the metrics on the page? And we do have the ability to connect to OS metrics. So I'll show how to do that here in a little bit. At threshold polling as well as the polling interval. And then again, if I want to refresh everything, I can select refresh, run queries for all tabs. As the behavior by default is specific to the tab that we're on. That's the queries that we're going to execute. And then here, the visual and show alarms, the alarm icon in the system tray. And though you can't see my system tray right now, I do have that notification prompting me. And then here, the number of historical values in the graph. So again, we have the ability to pull that information out and see that there. So going a little bit further, we can look at the per data source level. So here, letting me know that it's a Windows and the host name. So if I would like to capture OS metrics, this is where I would put those credentials in. On the SQL Server side, here is a key option page. You'll notice the SQL profiling is enabled for my data source. What we're doing behind the scenes is we're making command line calls to SQL Server's profiler. All right, we're going to make the calls in there. We're going to get back the information at the intervals that you indicate here on this options page. And then as such, we'll pull that information back, and then we will start aggregating that within Performance Analyst. So we'll see this in a little bit, where we're going to see queries being executed. We're going to be able to see how many times they're able to be they've been executed. So the same information can be seen in the profiler, in the native profiler, but I found myself scrolling all the way through to find where different queries are being executed. Here we're going to see them in one place, aggregated up, given as total time, total execution time, total executions of the query. So again, and here we have it for the new data source. So if I bring on a new data source for SQL Server, and here is the current data source. So again, I've started profiling. The refresh interval is 30 seconds, and then we have the memory usage max is 5,000 KB. Right, for Sybase, we have some other information here, and then DB2. Oracle, we take the defaults. That's why we do not see an option for Oracle here. So we'll go ahead and exit out of the options page. So looking across the top, we're going to see our home page. We can look at our memory. So here's information pertaining to memory. So again, we're looking at, from a memory perspective, our efficiency, some of the hit ratios, the cached object types, all the way down to some workload analysis, looking at the logins. Again, my simple database here, I don't have a lot of activity, but very interesting when I get to see this in action at customer sites, to be able to see the different workload analysis going on and see the different logins. We can also drill into the memory tab. Right, there's the home page. We could look specifically at buffer cache, procedure cache, or log cache. So if I looked at buffer cache, we're seeing information specific to the buffer cache. So again, we're looking here at the top 20 buffer cache objects. Right, looking again at some of the graphs down below. Right, we can hop over to the I/O page, and you'll start getting a feel of how this works. Right, our main home page for each of the tabs, and we can drill in and then look further in specific to some of the areas within the home page. So here, if I want to look at System I/O, I can drill in. Then we'll start, as this page refreshes, I could potentially change as information comes in, maybe a bar graph. Right, we can look here, change data type here, maybe a horizontal bar graph. So again, you can see I have the flexibility to choose the different types. We'll take a look at the space. Again, now we're down through looking at information there. The database, from a database perspective here, since we are SQL Server, this would be, again, on Sybase as well. With the concept of databases, we'll see this tab is available. We can go ahead and look down through the information. Here, you see an alert set up. My database is requiring backup. So again, I can double-click that. There's 6 of that. I'm hovering over it now. I see that I have 6. So if I were to drill into this, just double-clicking, it would take me to the database's summary. Right. So here, then we can look down. The last backup, you can see the databases that need to be backed up. So if I were to select that and right-click, you'll notice because it is part of DBArtisan, I have the ability then to manage with DBArtisan. So I can take the corrective action without ever leaving the product. Well, in essence, I've never left DBArtisan. Performance Analyst is part of DBArtisan. So as we step through, I want to take us through now. Here are the operating system metrics. Again, I need to connect. I'm not going to do that today. Here we have the top sessions. So if I select top sessions, I can see those here. I can look at the top SQL here. Now this is where the profiling comes into play. So this has been profiling since I've been connected to this data source, right? And it's been caching the memory locally, and now I'm able to see the information. So here we can see some of the top for reads, writes, CPU, and elapsed time. If I look at criteria, I could, if I'd like to, reduce this, maybe specify just to a database, and then get the SQL just for that specific database. And I just so happen to choose one that doesn't have any activity. Let's go ahead and try another one. If that doesn't work, we'll go back and clear everything, and we'll get. So here is our full list. So again, the entire list we're able to sort. We can sort by database if we'd like. Maybe we're looking at total executions. Start seeing information here as well. Elapsed time. Again, this is all based on what we've captured from SQL Server's profiler. And then we certainly have the refresh. Here are our options. And here is the threshold maintenance. So if I were to drill into threshold maintenance, we have the platform. Again, DBArtisan recognizes I'm connected to SQL Server. We have our default template. And then I created a new one. I just called it a copy of. So at this point, I could edit the template. And here, you get a feel of what you're able to do then. So here are all the thresholds that we have. Here are the ones that I have currently. So again, let's take a look. In this case, let's see. Databases requiring backup. If I was interested, what is my threshold? I'm going to generate an alarm if there's anything greater than 0. So any databases that need backup, as long as there's one, I want to generate the alert to prompt me that I need to take corrective action. Again, I can do that to either one of these, right? Databases with auto shrink. Let's see what I have for that. Again, I'm prompting with an alert, anything greater than 0. Now I can pull information, new thresholds over by simply selecting and clicking the arrow, the right arrow, and then it'll bring it over, and then I can default and specify the values. I'm going to take a step now and just talk a little bit about what's happening as I've connected to Performance Analyst. So though our stored procedures are on the server, they're not executed until a user of DBArtisan starts up Performance Analyst. And so those queries are dormant, right, until we get a Performance Analyst session going. And then we start firing off the queries. That's why during the introduction I mentioned real-time performance metrics, right? We're not able to go back. The longest history I have back is as long as my session has been running, and it's all in cache within my local Performance Analyst session. So as soon as I were to leave this session, exit out of Performance Analyst, if I came back in, we'd start with a fresh graph, starting, in this case, a new timeline, building the data for us. So again, this is all real-time. if another end user, another DBArtisan user, started Performance Analyst earlier in the morning, though he would have those metrics on his desktop, I would not have access to those metrics. Those are specific to the end user. So that's a little bit of background about what we're doing with Performance Analyst to get this information to build this. Again, real-time looking into the performance metrics. Now, if I hopped over to Oracle, again, we're able to see here my problem table spaces. Right, it's highlighted at 4. If I double-click, it drills down right where I need to be. In this case, it takes me to the Space tab, into the Space Analysis, and here I'm able to see the 4 troubled table spaces. So again, if I wanted to remedy this issue, I can manage with DBArtisan. Takes me directly to this table space editor, and I can perform the corrective action from here. So again, very quickly, I'm able to identify a problem and then resolve it. So as we step through here, we're going to see very similar information. Right, we have our key ratio analysis, buffer caches here, our SQL analysis, as well as workload. And again, we like to present something that is understandable for somebody that might be an expert in SQL Server. That's their background, but they're also handling Oracle. We want to give you a display that makes sense to you. So again, that's why you're seeing the tabs are identical, and then where we can do it, we're going to use the same nomenclature as well. And then, as I mentioned, for the Oracle, we're going to pull back our top sessions here, as well as looking at the top SQL. Right here, then, once we select the SQL, let's take a look here. Here's our criteria, our SQL details, right, and then our recent history. And here, if we want to pull this back, we can see different values as well. Right, I have nothing. The session, my database has just been up. So if I go back to SQL details, then I'm able to see here, right, some of the exact SQL that's being executed. Right, so we're able to explain this SQL if we'd like to, right from within Performance Analyst. So there is our query plan. There's a graphical. I can switch it on the fly and view it as text. And there's our textual explain plan. So that's pulled right from within Performance Analyst just by simply selecting the query and pressing the explain plan. Let's take a look at some of the other information we see here. So again, we're looking through the users. We can drop this down. If we want to see any locks or blocking locks, here are all of our locks happening. In this database, we do not have any blocking locks, so that's a good situation to have. Hovering over here are my alarms. There's my threshold maintenance. So if I want to look to see, do I have any alarms going on? I do. I have quite a few that are just at a very minor level with yellow. Here are some that have been cleared. So we're going to show all the alarms that have occurred since I've started my session and what's happened to them. So then I certainly have some in red and some in orange. Right, so again, double-clicking, it'll take me right there. Here, my invalid objects are 27. If I double-click then, I can drill in and get a better understanding. There's my object summary, and then table and indexes in the same table space. So again, as my demo database, certainly not up to standards. So again, but we're able to see all that information from within Performance Analyst. So as a recap, the way to access Performance Analyst would be to connect to your data source and then find the Analyst menu option, drop that down, and select any of the analysts. In this case, we've selected Performance Analyst. That initial time, don't be alarmed, it's going to ask you to install. You can walk through that, accept the schema and the default table space or default database if it's SQL Server, and you'll get those objects installed. Again, it's a package for Oracle and a stored procedure for SQL Server. And the SQL Server one is encrypted. The Oracle one is not. There's really nothing going on. If you're curious about it, you can certainly contact somebody from Embarcadero, and we can pass that information over to you. It's really standard queries we're executing against system tables or DMVs to bring back the information for you and then present it to you in that graphical format. The last thing to look at would be the options page, and then here if there's any analyst. So again, for performance analyst, we don't have anything here, but again, we can look to see about any of our options here that might be applicable. In this case, we're safe, right? But again, you can always look at this and realize if we need to make any change to our options within DBArtisan. So with that, I'd like to wrap up. Thank you for joining today's database skill sprint. Now I want to open it up here and look at some of the questions. So we had one that came through. Can you do any analysis on MongoDB? At this time, no. We're limited. Well, we've selected to support the four platforms: Oracle, SQL Server, Sybase, and DB2. And on the DB2 side, that would be DB2 LUW. So not on the mainframe or iSeries, it would be LUW only. All the way supporting all the newest versions of the databases. Oracle 12, SQL Server 2012, 2014 eventually, Sybase 16, and then DB2 10. So again, we're able to support all the way up to those platforms versions. All right, any other questions? If you have anything, please feel free to put them in the question manager. All right. I don't want to keep everybody. That was all the questions I had. I want to thank everybody again for joining today. Hopefully you were able to pick up a tidbit or two from the session with regard